So let's start. We always start with the timings of Salah. So before we actually get into timings of Salah, there's a very important hadith on the matter of timing. This is not the only hadith, but this is a very important hadith which I would like Brother Ahmed to read. And then he'll read it once in English, and then he will read a second time. I want to make some comments on some of the points.
So Jibreel alayhi salam came to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam when the sun is at his highest point, and he said to him, "Stand, O Muhammad, and pray Dhuhr when the sun has passed the highest point." Then he waited until the shadow of a man was equal to him in height, and he came to him for Asr, and he said to him, "Stand, O Muhammad, and pray Asr." Then he waited until the sun set, and he came to him and he said, "Stand and pray Maghrib." Then the Prophet stood and he prayed until the sun set. Then he waited until the twilight went, and he came to him and he said, "Stand and pray Isha." Then he stood and he prayed until Jibreel came to him when the dawn broke in the morning. And he said, "Stand, O Muhammad, and pray." Then he stood and he prayed the Subh or the Fajr. Then Jibreel came to him the next day when in the morning, when the shadow of a man was equal to him in height, and he said to him, "Stand, O Muhammad, and pray." Then he stood and he prayed Dhuhr. Then he came to him when the shadow of a man was equal to him twice in length, and he said to him, "Stand, O Muhammad, and pray." Then he stood and he prayed Asr. Then Jibreel came to him for Maghrib when the sun set at the same time as the day before, and the sun did not completely disappear, and he said, "Stand and pray." Then he prayed Maghrib, and then Jibreel came to him for Isha when the first third of the night had passed, and he said, "Stand and pray." Then the Prophet prayed Isha. Then Jibreel came to him in the morning when it was very bright, and he said to him, "Stand and pray." Then he stood and he prayed the Fajr. And then the Prophet said that whatever is between these two times is suitable for Salah.
So what's happened here? He's going to read again inshallah now, and we'll go through some of the points. This is not the only hadith on the matter, but I think it's a very important hadith, because Jibreel salam came to Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam one day and he said, "Pray Dhuhr." The next day when he said to pray Dhuhr, it was a different time. One day he came, he said, "Pray Asr." The next day when he said the Asr was different time. And so with the whole, every Salah, which the hadith explained. And then Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, was between, as Jibreel said, or the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, was between the two is the time for that prayer. So when we talk about the timing of the prayer, the hadith starts from Dhuhr. So let's read again. I will stop inshallah. There's some points I want to make.
So Jibreel came to the Prophet when the sun had passed its highest point, and he said, "Get up, O Muhammad, and pray Dhuhr when the sun has passed its highest point."
So we have now the beginning time of Dhuhr, which is after Zawal. When from a person on earth looking at the sunrise, when it reached the highest point, the solar noon, and when it starts dropping, that's called the start of Dhuhr. Once it starts coming down, that point is the start of Dhuhr. When we go further in the lesson, I will give you a different view of Hanabila on Jum'ah.
So Zawal, is that when it's at the highest?
Zawal is when it stays. So when it's in the middle, it stays there for like a couple of minutes and then it starts dropping. So at that time, Zawal you can't pray, we'll cover that as well. But the start is when it passes the midpoint, when it starts coming down now. So that's the start of Dhuhr. Now.
Then he waited until a man's shadow was equal to his height. Then he came to him for Asr and said,
Okay. So now we are saying, when did the Asr start? So first day he said, this is the time, get up, pray Dhuhr. And then when a man's shadow was equal to his height. In those countries, when there is Zawal, meaning when the midpoint of the sun, you can literally have no shadow. It's very small shadow. But in reality, we will study that later on as well. If I had, do you have a pen? Let me see. Jazakallah khair. Let's say this pen, at the time of zawal, at the time of midday, the shadow is at, let's say, about 5 centimeters from here, because sun is on the top. In some countries, even at midpoint, because it's not there, you see in the winter in England, the sun is all the way there. The midpoint is not on top of your head. So even at the midday, the shadow is actually quite visible. But let's say at the time of noon, solar noon, the shadow is at 5 centimeters. So when from that point where the shadow is now, it increases another length of whatever you're measuring with. I'm measuring with pen or a nail. So wherever the shadow is at the point of zawal, and then when it increases a length of one man, meaning man's own shadow. So if I was looking at myself at zawal, where my shadow is, I've been to Qatar in June. It's literally, there is no shadow. It's just about that much. From there, when as the sun goes down, the shadow increases and increases. When it gets to your own height or one length of whatever you're measuring with, that's when he came back. That's the first day we're talking about. He said, stand and pray Asr. Now the Hanafis, they say it has to be 2 lengths for the Asrs to start. We'll cover that later. But we look at this hadith. So now we know where the Asr started. Good. Now.
Then he waited until the sun set. Then he came to him and said, get up, O Muhammad, and pray Maghrib.
Sunset. Sunset meaning the sun has set from the horizon. You can't see any of it. The fully invisible. The sun itself, not the light. The rays may be visible, doesn't matter. The sun itself has to set. The moment it has set, the Maghrib has started. Good.
So he got up and he prayed Maghrib when the sun had set. Then he waited until the twilight disappeared. Then he came to him and said, get up, O Muhammad, and pray Isha.
Okay, we'll discuss that as well. What does twilight mean? That's coming later. But the brightness, the redness, or the whiteness which follows the redness, when that has disappeared, meaning the dark is become really dark. And living in England, we do have that twilight period, which we are in it now. It started now, that we never actually receive the full dark. But that's a subject as well, which will come later on. So when the shafaq, the redness has disappeared, and enough time has gone past to be fully dark, the Isha has started.
Then he came to him when dawn broke and said, get up, O Muhammad, and pray. So he got up and he prayed Subh or Fajr.
Okay. So now, what does the dawn broke means? That's another subject as well. So now we know the 5 starting times. Dawn broke here. The issue is, when we look at the timetable, the night and the beginning of if you see how the scientists, they split the night, they have a night, then they have an astronomical twilight. The astronomical twilight is, let's say that was the horizon. Okay, this is where we live, the earth. I'm not saying the earth is flat. From wherever you are, when the sun goes down, right? And it keeps going down, 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 let's say 1 degree, 2 degree, 3 degree, and it'll keep going down to maybe, 20 degree. And at some point it will start coming back up from the other side, yeah? So when it comes back up, when it reaches 18 degrees, that's called astronomical twilight. This is where most people say the Fajr has started. Even though in Islamic way, the way we look at Fajr, I will explain that before the scientific calendar, how did we look at Fajr? And if you don't have the available, how do you look at it? We discussed that as well. But when it reaches, when the sun starts coming up towards the horizon, when it reaches 18 degrees, that's called astronomical twilight. And then when it comes to 15 degrees, that's called civil twilight, and then at 12 degrees, nautical twilight, or one way or the other. I know the 18 degrees because that's what we use. Some do say that you can use 15 degrees, but personally I don't agree with it, but there are ulama, they say that. But all around the world, for many centuries, the way Fajr has been looked at 18 degrees, they say the Fajr starts. And even when you measure now from the visual, where it's possible to see, visually observe Fajr in the countries, and you will see scientifically that it's almost at 18 degrees most of the places. So that's how we see in our timetables. In the Islamic teachings, what you do, there are two mornings, subh. There's one subh kadhib. Kadhib means liar, meaning not real subh. Subh, not real morning. And that morning in the sky there appears light like this, like a little lamp, or just, and then it disappears, and then the whole horizon, it starts getting brighter. So the first one, when it's like a tail of a fox, I believe in one of the narrations been said, that is almost impossible to look at it in England, because some people who are in astronomy, they say it is only visible because we are so far away from the equator. It's only visible maybe 2 weeks, 1 week there and 1 week there in England, and even then you won't have the good weather to see it. So the people, there are some scholars up north, they have been observing every night for years. And they said it is very rare that you will actually see that in England. But that, I think I've seen in Pakistan. You can see it's like a pillar almost. And then it will become, it won't become any brighter. And then you will see a slight line of the light coming on the horizon. This is the start of Fajr. This one, the one which I said, tail of the fox, you can eat, drink, don't have to start, the Fajr doesn't start. That's Subh Kadhib. The Subh, the Sadiq, the Fajr start is when on the horizon you see the first point of the light. Okay, so we finished the hadith. So we finished the first day. Now we know the five different times the Salah starts. So Dhuhr starts as soon as the solar noon goes past Zawal, after Zawal. Asr, this hadith said, one shadow from from the solar noon, another shadow of thing, whatever you are measuring with, is added. That's Asr. Maghrib as soon as the sun sets. Isha, when the twilight disappears. The twilight is two types. We have a red and then followed by a white. Yeah. So the different views of the scholars, we will explain that as we go through the course. But now we understand. And then Isha, once that disappears. And Fajr, when the Subh Sadiq. In our calendars, we normally use astronomical twilight for those who use 18 degrees. And a timetable which I think is the most correct, but people have different opinion in England. Okay, and other countries where they don't use timetable, they actually observe it, where the weather depends how far up north you are from how many degrees you are away from the equator. I think it makes it more difficult. But if you are in a country like Saudi Arabia, you'll be actually, when you go for Hajj or when you go for Umrah, it'd be worth being there. Well, it'd be worth being in awake before Fajr, and then observe. Mostly you will find is clear sky. Find out which way the sun rises. have a nice cup of tea and sit and observe as a student. Yeah.